So this short little presentation is going to run you through how to write body paragraphs for text response essays. And in particular, we're going to be looking at Red Dog. So we're going to be using the teal structure, what you'll have known as the teal structure. We're going to give it probably a slightly different name to maybe what you haven't heard before. We all know topic sentences. They're the first sentence of the paragraph, and it really talks about what the paragraph's about. Evidence is about where we find that evidence in the text. So where in the text does it talk about whatever this body paragraph's about? Explanation is really talking about why the author, or in this case, since it's a film, the director, has put that evidence in. And then last of all is the linking sentence, or the how. How is this all relevant to what we're talking about in our essay? So best to start thinking about it as a what, where, why, how structure. So what is this paragraph about? Where in the text is there evidence to support this? Why does the author or the director use this evidence? Put these things in the film, and then how does that link back to the main contention of our essay? So I'm going to teach you two ways to do topic sentences. The first is very formulaic and it works. It's very successful. A lot of our Year 12s use this format. And it's as simple as director, verb, topic, and message. So we know that our director is Cruz Stenders. A verb might be discusses, argues, portrays. And then the topic could be any of the themes or whatever the topic's about. We might be talking about mateship or community or love or friendship. And then the message is, what is the director trying to say about that topic? Okay, so what is he trying to say about mateship or community or friendship or the environment or whatever it is? Now, so that's one way of doing it. Really effective way. It's very simple. You just keep that formula in your head. The one drawback is that every paragraph starts with the name of the director. So it gets a little bit formulaic. So the other option is, and you don't have to do this, you'll get perfectly fine results. You're not going to get marked down for using the formulaic way. The other way is you can use the skills we've been working on with our because, but, so, our subordinate conjunctions and our positives to mix up a sentence as long as it still talks about what the director's message is. So I'll show you an example of how we do both of those. So let's say the essay question was, how does the director portray the town of Dampier in the film Red Dog? If we look at our formula down here, we've got the director, Cruz Stenders, and then our verb, portrays, and our topic, Dampier, and then the message, as a town with a harsh environment from the very outset of the movie. So there's our topic sentence. You say it's simple, there's no evidence. We don't start talking about Jack Collins and Maureen coming into Dampier or any of that stuff, because that's all what we're going to talk about in our evidence. So this is our topic sentence, and it's simple. It's done. We've followed the formula, and it works. Let's have a look at using without using the formula, and instead with this option, I've done it a positive. So you can see the positive is added in red. So I've used one of those skills to break up my sentence and have a complex sentence here. And so I've written, the town of Dampier, a mining town in the Pilbara, is portrayed by Stenders to be a harsh and unhospitable place. You will remember that Red Dog was called the Pilbara Wanderer because the Pilbara is an area in Western Australia where Dampier is and where this film's set. I hope you noticed that with this, I've actually followed all the same rules in that first topic sentence. Here's the director, here's my verb, here's my topic, and I've added a positive about my topic, and then here's the message, that it's a harsh and unhospitable place. So I've just mixed up those rules. I've still got all those four things in there. I've got my director, my verb, my topic, and my message, but I've mixed it up and I've used the positives and stuff to show, give a bit more information about the town of Dampier. Both really good options. Okay, so next we move on to our where, or the evidence. So where in the film does it tell us that it's a unhospitable place? So we start off with the opening scene of Red Dog sees Jack and Maureen driving to Dampier. Maureen questions who would want to live in a place like Dampier whilst looking out the empty, dusty, dry and hot landscape that they are passing through. So our evidence is that first scene where Jack and Maureen are driving in the car. Okay, and you see there's no explanations here, there's no how he does it or anything like that. We're just talking about what it is. And what I've actually done is you want to be putting quotes in. So I've embedded a quote in here. Maureen in the film actually says, "Who would want to live in a place like this?" But since I've changed it so it fits a little bit better into my sentence, I've put those square brackets around just to say to the audience, hey, look, this is a quote, and I know I've changed the quote. Since I've changed the quote, I'm putting the bit I've changed so that it works in my sentence into square brackets. So there's my evidence. We're talking about Jack and Maureen coming in. Now, let's talk about why, or explaining that evidence. Now, there's two ways you can go about this. You can talk about why does the director use that idea, or you can talk about why does the author portray it in the way that he does portray it. You can do either or you can actually do both like I've done here. So first of all, I've talked about why does the author portray it in this way. I've said Stender uses wide shots to emphasize the desolate and unhospitable nature of the environment to the audience. So, wide shots are those far away shots that show heaps of the setting. And in this case, the setting is that desert, so it is desolate, it's empty, it's unhospitable. It doesn't look like it's somewhere you'd be able to survive for very long. And now I talk about why does the director use that idea. He utilizes the isolated town and surrounding deserts to emphasize the theme of loneliness, mateship, and the importance of the community. Utilizes is just another fancy word, a tier 2 word a way of saying uses. So he uses the isolated town and surrounding desert to emphasize the themes of loneliness. There's nothing much more lonely than a desert. There's no one there. Like, you can be lonely in a city and have no friends or anything like that, but as an audience watching, you're not going to get struck with that same sense of loneliness if someone's standing in a crowd. Right? They might not be talking to anyone, quite lonely, but if you put them in the middle of the desert, anyone looking at it will realize straight away that there's loneliness there. And with that loneliness gets tied in with mateship. Like in that small isolated town, mateship and sense of community, it's so important because there's no one there. If they don't have each other, they wouldn't survive. If their community wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to live there. So what we're saying here is that he uses that isolated town to really highlight the loneliness and the importance of community and mateship. So you wouldn't highlight it like I did. I've just done that so that you can see the two different ways that I've explained this quote. Then we have our how, which is our last sentence where we link back to our contention, what our overall answer is. A good way to think about this is just to really rephrase your topic sentence. But you just don't want to write the exact same thing again. So use slightly different words. In this case as well, remember how I used an appositive in my topic sentence at the beginning of this paragraph? Well, this time I don't want to use an appositive because I've used that form of sentence already. So this time I'm going to start with a subordinate conjunction. I'm going to use despite. It's like although, so I'm going to go in one direction and then I'm going to come back and contrast it with something else. So despite Dampier being a close-knit and caring community, now I'm going to come back and talk about something not so good about Dampier. Stender's depiction of the town, so the way he shows the town, is one of a barren and unfriendly environment that can even be dangerous to those who do not treat it with the respect it deserves. So barren is like empty. And when we're talking about, and this last bit here, when I was writing this, it took me a long time to write this sentence, because to write good sentences, it takes you a little while to think about it and maybe even reformat it right and cross something out and rewrite it. I knew I wanted to start with a subordinate conjunction because I'd already done the appositive. And when I was writing, I thought, I probably really should have talked about those stories that Vano talked about the guy filling up his motorbike with petrol that blows up, and the other guy that goes out without a hat and starts speaking Chinese. Really good examples of what a desolate town and place the Pilbara is. So I kind of just paid homage to that with this bit here about how it can be dangerous to those who don't treat it with the respect. And that's essentially how we write our paragraph. So that's it there with the formula. We've got director, verb, topic, message. And here it is again with the slightly more complex sentence with using the appositive here instead. So we have the town of Dampier, a mining town in the Pilbara, is portrayed by Stenders to be a harsh and unhospitable place. The opening scenes of Red Dog see Jack and Maureen driving to Dampier. Maureen questions who would want to live in a place like Dampier whilst looking at the empty, dusty, dry and hot landscape that they're passing through. Stenders uses wide shots to emphasize the desolate and unhospitable nature of the environment to the audience. He utilizes the isolated town and surrounding desert to emphasize the themes of loneliness, mateship, and the importance of community. Despite Dampier being a close-knit and caring community, Stenders' depiction of the town is one of a barren and unfriendly environment that can even be dangerous to those who not treat it with the respect it deserves. So I hope you see how when we can have a sentence here telling us what the paragraph is going to be about, we talk about where in the text there's evidence for what what the topic is. Here we unpack that idea of why the director or the author, if we were doing a book instead of a film, why he's done this and what the effect is. And then here we link back to our contention, or another way to think about it is we rephrase this in a different format. So maybe using complex subordinate clauses at the beginning if we've used them in the middle before, or something like that. Now, that's fantastic. That's a really good paragraph, and you'd be really happy if you wrote a paragraph like that. But do you remember before how I was talking about wishing that I'd use some other evidence as well? So I'm going to do this whole process again for you. I'm going to show you what you could do, another way of doing it, where you can show multiple bits of evidence and actually split them up. So you go evidence, explanation, evidence, explanation. So let's have a look at that. So we've got our same format of topic sentence again, director, verb, topic, message. And I'm just going to follow that one this time. So this time let's talk about how the director explores mateship. So Stenders suggests that mateship is an integral part of what it means to be Australian. Director, verb, topic, message. What's the message he's saying about mateship? That it's what it means to be Australian. It's a really important. Integral means it's an important part. If something's integral to a machine, if you take that piece out, the machine won't work. So when I'm saying something like integral, I'm saying it's so important that you take mateship away and you're not really an Australian anymore. Whether you believe that or not, it's irrelevant. That's what I'm arguing in this paragraph. That's what this paragraph's going to be about. So here's our evidence. Despite being a dog, you can see I'm starting with a subordinate conjunction here. Red Dog is mates with nearly every member of the community of Dampier. In fact, the only people who aren't his mates are the Cribbages. Red Dog's friendship even saves the life of Jocko, quite literally from being eaten by Lord Nelson, but also on a deeper level when he makes Jocko laugh for the first time in years. So my evidence here is talking about when Jocko is trying to kill himself by getting eaten by the shark that they've nicknamed Lord Nelson. He tells this story to Thomas, the truckie who's bringing the statue to town, and he said, he saved my life. So I think I've stuffed up here. I think he said he saved my life, not saves my life. But I didn't like my. That doesn't work in my sentence. So once again, bracketing the square brackets, and I've changed my to the. I'm just acknowledging to the audience, look, I've changed the quote here. Actually, should have put one around this S as well. And I've also quoted, because it's a nice easy quote, I know they've said Lord Nelson, because how else would I know the name of the shark? And so I put that in quotation marks as well. So there, we've got a piece of evidence. I haven't explained it. So we've got the fact that Red Dog saved him from this shark, and then I start to go into, I'm leading up to the explaining here, but also how he makes him laugh for the first time, because for me, that's actually the more important thing, not that he saved him from the shark. So I've decided to go with both again, why the director uses the idea and why does the director portray it in this way. So this simple gift of laughter from a mate helps Jocko as he battles with crippling and suicidal depression caused by the loss of his family in a car accident. Stender juxtaposes this character on the verge of suicide with the sudden and unadulterated laughter that comes from watching our mates goofing around to highlight the importance of friendship and social interactions to our mental health. So here I've talked about the fact that Jocko is really, really depressed, and I've explained, because there's an explanation, right? I've explained why he's depressed and the fact that he's suicidal. And then I've used one of my favourite words, juxtaposes, which means just taking two things from opposite ends of the spectrum and putting them together so that you notice how different they are. I think my favourite example is those photos that you see of wrinkly old people holding brand new babies, and because they're so old and wrinkly, the baby looks so smooth and new, and since the baby's so smooth and new, the old people look so old and ancient. They juxtapose to really bring out the age difference. And so that's what Stender's doing here. He's juxtaposing the fact that we've got someone who's suicidal and suicidally depressed And then the next minute, he's watching his mates goofing around and he's just laughing. You know, you can't get much further ends of the spectrum from suicidally depressed to unadulterated laughter. Unadulterated just means it hasn't been watered down and there's nothing fake in there. Like it's a true laugh. It's not a fake laugh. Unadulterated means if I was to say the water was unadulterated, it means no one's put anything else into the water. It's just pure water. I think pure is a good way to kind of think about unadulterated. So there's my explanation. Now, I want to use another bit of evidence, okay, in terms of talking about our topic of how important mateship is in this, or how Stenders depicts mateship. And I'm going on. Another way that Stenders uses Red Dog to show how important mateship is in battling loneliness. Mateship is in battling loneliness is when Vano is virtually cast out of the community due to his homesickness. It is Red Dog who sits with him and does not judge. Now notice I've done an ellipsis here because the next part of this sentence, I haven't finished the sentence, is actually explanation. So I didn't want to put it on this part of the slide. So don't be aware that the explanation, when we're writing these, at the more complex end of writing these essays, the explanations can sit within the same sentence as some of the evidence. So here's our idea. As you can see, I haven't explained it at all. I've just gone, right, that's, you know, I'm thinking about that part of the film where Vano keeps talking about Abruzzi and the ski patrol bash him, and they pretty much, the whole community says to him, listen, you got to stop talking about Abruzzi, otherwise we're going to let the ski patrol have their way with you. And so it cuts into a montage of him sitting with Red Dog, and Red Dog just listening to him patiently, being a good mate, and allowing him just to talk through his homesickness. And it's this sharing with a friend that makes a difference. But I'm starting to get into the explanation, so let's move on. So the sentence is that I'll read the whole sentence for you so we can get the flow. It is Red Dog who sits with him and does not judge, which allows him to conquer his loneliness and eventually find love and a family. So I'm explaining, what does Red Dog's mateship or friendship do? It allows him to conquer his loneliness. You know, it doesn't overwhelm him anymore. He shares it. That's what friends do. We share the burden. It is this belief in friends who stand by us in our hour of need, when the rest of the world has seemingly turned its back on us, that Stenders portrays so succinctly in the relationship between Red Dog and Vano, highlighting the importance of mates that stick by us in times of our darkest hour. So, succinctly, important, impressive word, tier 2 word again. See how many tier 2 words I'm using in this essay. Succinctly means to the point, okay? So he doesn't use heaps of stuff he doesn't need to. He just very quickly, through a montage, shows us the relationship between Red Dog and Vano, and how Vano goes from this sad, lonely guy to laughing and happy again because he's got his mate with him who will listen to him when no one else will. And since I've done 2 bits of evidence and 2 explanations, now I link back to my contention again, or what I'm talking about, or I rephrase my topic sentence. Mateship is such an important part of the film that Stenders embeds the positive benefits of mateship throughout the film, demonstrating to the audience just how integral it is to the very fabric of the Australian identity. So we have a slightly more complex paragraph here. You can see it's a bit longer. We've used that very formulaic sentence starter, and that's perfectly fine. I think if I was doing 3 paragraphs of this, it'd still be fine, but I'd be starting to feel a bit, see the repetition of starting every paragraph with Stenders. But it's perfectly fine. It's not going to affect your result. And you can see quite clearly here, evidence, explanation, evidence, explanation. So you can put all your evidence and then just put all your explanation, but sometimes it's better to and you'll just find yourself naturally doing it once you become more fluent with the writing, of just kind of explaining kind of as you go. So it depends on the paragraph and it depends on your personal preference. And then at the end, I could really write this any way I wanted because I use this formula here, so I didn't use any positives, I didn't use any complex sentences. So I didn't have to worry about reformatting or using a different technique here. So hopefully that's started you thinking about topic sentences or the where, what, why, how of writing body paragraphs in text response essays.